interviewing Sophie.
Okay.
Sophie's going to answer all your questions.
Alright.
Yeah, she's the rare breed of attention hound.
Through the air, through the air. Why don't you take me?
Hi everybody, this is Pete with another video in my series of 31 or more that I am making to promote this album. Silhouette, Dafni's songs performed by her friends that I co-produced with Alfonso Rodenas in tribute to my late wife Dafni Amirsakis, a singer-songwriter in the Los Angeles Americana music scene. Today I'm standing outside of where Big Scary Tree recording studio used to be. I believe it was this building now, which is like now I believe an extremely trendy restaurant called Cha Cha Cha. Either in there or in the bridal store that's next door to it. I think it was this entrance though, but I'm a little confused because it's been remodeled and renovated since I was last here. This video concerns Bliss Bowen and her version of Dafni's song Floating that she performs on the tribute album. But first I'm going to talk a little bit about Dafni's recording of her second album, Drifting in Circles. This one that she recorded here at Jeb Lipson's studio, Big Scary Tree. It's in the it's on 3rd Street in downtown LA, Arts District. Excuse any wind noise. Close to Little Tokyo. It's in the Arts District, close to Little Tokyo. Dafni recorded her album here, I believe it was something like May to August 2005. After we had recorded the Red album at home, we kind of decided Dafni wanted to have a band feel for her next album. So we wanted to get some more recording gear and see if we could record like several instruments at once, like drums and bass and vocals and guitars all at once, and have a bit more of a band feel, because we felt that the Red album suffered because Dafni hadn't recorded to a metronome, to a click, and things were a little bit off, and she just wanted to have a band feel for the next album. She had started playing with Craig Bender. I mentioned him in Mark Nemet's video. And so Dafni wanted to get a drummer and a bassist, and then they were going to record and to play shows. To get the recording gear, Dafni asked her friend Jay Goen, who had produced or engineered her Dreamland demo. Go back to the Rick Shea video where I talked about that. And he went on Craigslist or somewhere and he found, some guy selling this Pro Tools interface that would allow you to record, up to eight microphones at once. So Dafni, and then he said, I know this guy who's selling it. It's my friend Jeb. He's a good guy. Give him a call. So Dafni called this guy Jeb, and he basically convinced Dafni that amount of money that she'd have to pay to buy the recording gear, microphones, stands, cords. It'll be cheaper for her just to go into his studio, pay for a couple of days and do all the basic tracking, and it'll be cheaper to do it that way. And so we discussed it, and Dafni thought it was a good idea. And Jeb had like a proper studio, he had the proper mixing board, he had tons of gear, and so that's how we met Jeb. And we came down to see the studio, and we liked it, and we recorded soon thereafter. Dafni, but this time she had assembled a band. She and Craig had been playing together for maybe a few months, maybe 6 months, and then Dafni put an ad in the Music Connection magazine, in the classified section, saying that she wanted a drummer and bassist to play with the singer-songwriter, and the styles were kind of a mix of Ani DeFranco and Willie Nelson and Nora Jones. I think that's how she used to describe her style in those days. She got a few responses for both the bassist and drummer, but she ended up playing with a girl called Alejandra Cuesta, who had like a little studio rehearsal space, and she had a friend Yannick Luthra, and he played with Dafni for a while. Certainly played on the album. A few other people had responded, and there were a couple of gigs that she'd done with a guy called Chris on bass, and one gig with a guy called Chris on bass, and one gig with a guy called Aubrey on bass, and they were both really good bass players too. And Yannick was a good bass player. It just that band assembled, and also Dafni wanted to have accordion on some of her songs, and just by chance, her friend Maggie told Dafni that her brother played accordion. So Dafni got Maggie's brother Josh into the band, and so that was the band, like a 5-piece. Dafni on vocals and acoustic guitar, Craig on piano, Josh on accordion, and then the rhythm section of Yannick Luthra on bass and Alejandra on drums. They rehearsed quite a bit. They didn't play too many shows. I think that lineup only played one show that I remember at 14 Below in Santa Monica. But they rehearsed quite a bit. I think they rehearsed almost every weekend, maybe every Saturday or something, for a while. And the band was sounding good in the rehearsal space. They came to record here. I remember it was always very hot down here in downtown LA. We always had to rent a car to come down. I don't think the public transport was up to some of the late nights that we came down here, or odd hours. We would kind of rent a car, and then maybe Dafni would have a gig somewhere like San Luis Obispo or Santa Barbara or somewhere, and so we'd take advantage of the rental car to go up there. The recording session went pretty smoothly, I think. Jeb recorded Dafni onto 2-inch tape, which is like the old way that how people used to record, to get a kind of a warm tone with all the instruments. I think as a result, everything had to be overdubbed, and it's kind of difficult you have to make decisions that are there for eternity when you're recording on tape. It's not like the modern day approaches with computers, where you can record everything and just make your selection later when you're doing the mixing. You can say which was the best take. Also, I think they recorded to a click, which I think was kind of difficult for everybody in the band. I know there were some problems. Alejandra had butted heads with Jeb a little bit during the recording. I think it was just difficult because they didn't rehearse to a click. You see, the drummer just set the tempo, and whether they sped up or slowed down or whatever, that's just how the song went. But in the studio, I think they recorded to a click, and that meant that the drummer was kind of maybe listening to the metronome a bit and not just listening or being free to play, and the band is everyone's a little bit off, I think, if the drummer is not comfortable. I kind of feel also, that Dafni's vocals are overdubbed on here. I mean, basically everything is overdubbed apart from the drums and bass. And I think the album just has a bit of a disjointed feel to me. The vocals don't quite mesh with the other instruments. Although the songs are great. I think Dafni had really grown as a songwriter. A lot of her songs at that time were about... She wrote a lot of them when she was doing her postdoc in the pharmacology department, and she had a guitar in the lab, and she wrote some of them, like one day I'll wake and this will all be a dream, that Grant Langston covers on this album. I mean, that song is all about her frustrations at being a postdoc. There were some family issues. She hadn't heard from her brother for a long time, and so there are 2 or 3 songs on here that are kind of about her brother. There are some frustrations with the wedding planning and stuff, and there's also some love songs. There's one song, Cheesy Love Song, which is, I guess, a song about us walking down to the Venice Promenade, getting a beer at the Waterfront Cafe. And I think the songs were good. The band was quite tight. I forgot to mention Tom Terrell plays trumpet on 2 or 3 of the songs, and he was a bandmate with Dustin Moore, who played bass on Dafni's Red album. He was also like one of these jazz wunderkinds who, was just a child prodigy on the trumpet, and Dafni had him play on several of the songs. And I feel the songs with the trumpet are the ones that really, there's something about those horns that can just elevate a song that might be sounding a little bit flat. You put some trumpet on there, mellophonium, and it just lifts a song that brightens it up. I don't know, there's something about those horns that sound really good on Dafni's kind of music, anyway. Also Brian Robbins, who was Dafni's guitar teacher and had stood up for me at the St. Sophia's Greek Orthodox wedding. He played dobro and banjo and electric guitar on 3 of the songs. And then there was a guy called Luciano, who did various percussion on Dafni's song Dance, which the Blue Dolphins play. In fact, it's going to be the next video, I believe. Song 1 of disc 2. I'll get to that one soon. I think that's enough to talk about the recording down here. So this video, I just also want to say Jeb was also the engineer of Dafni's last recording, which is this EP, Dafni's EP, And If We Say Goodbye. But I'll get to that video, several songs in the future. Okay, today this video is really about Bliss Bowen and her version of Dafni's song, Floating. Dafni's version appears on this album, Sweet Time, produced by Dan Janisch, who plays a fantastic guitar solo on this song. This is song Floating. I don't have much recollection of ever talking to Dafni about what this song meant, but I know she was listening a lot to Radiohead in those days. I think it may be In Rainbow's album at that time. And I think this is her song that's kind of inspired by Radiohead. It has a I'm not sure anyone would pick that it sounds like Radiohead, but it has a little bit of a kind of psychedelic, spacey feel. The first part is about floating in the sea. The second part seems like it's about floating out in outer space. And then Dan does this fantastic solo in the middle where the band kind of rocks. And it's fantastic. I think it's one of the best songs on that album. Dan produced that album, and it's a high quality record. Bliss is someone, I don't remember how we met her. I know for a while when we were hanging out at the cinema bar, people would talk about Bliss, and you should play, we should know her, you should meet her, you get along. I don't remember meeting her for, must have been maybe a year or two after we were already hanging out at the cinema bar. I don't know. I know she was hosting the Western Beat, I think it was called, at Molly Malone's, a bar in Fairfax area, and we had gone there to see a girl called Heather Waters play. There's another very good singer. She's not on this album, but check her out. She's very talented. And Bliss was hosting, so probably we met there. Dafni was so friendly and talked to people, I'm sure she met Bliss that day, but I don't know. I just kind of feel like I've always known Bliss, but I don't remember exactly where we met. Bliss is a fantastic singer. She writes beautiful songs herself, although I haven't seen her play all that often. And I've never seen her play with a band, only like accompanying herself on guitar. I kind of feel like we've been friends. I've gone to her Christmas party many times, or Dafni too, and she's been to our place for some house concerts or Christmas or Greek Easter or something. And Dafni and Bliss played several kind of singer-songwriter shows, songs, performance in the round or songwriter nights where everyone gets a few songs and song trading, and but otherwise I don't kind of know Bliss more as a journalist. She writes for the Pasadena Weekly, or used to, and at one point she actually wrote a nice article about Dafni. I think it was called something like Dimes and Dreams in Her Pocket. Not sure. Yeah. I might include a photo of that article. Bliss, Dafni here. Dafni's version is on the Sweet Time album. I'm not sure she played it all that often. I know around that time when they recorded Sweet Time, she played it quite a bit. I remember there were a few times Dan would sit in with them at the cinema bar, and it sounded fantastic. And I think the recording turned out really well. Bliss took a completely different take on the song. It's much more gentle and much more, it really feels like you're floating away. There are sounds of the ocean and seagulls and the band that she recorded it with. It's another one of these songs on the album that I wasn't at the recording session. She recorded it with David Raven on drums, Ted Russell Camp on bass, and Chris Lawrence, who you might remember from the Danny Magoo video, on guitar. And they recorded it at Ted's studio, so I wasn't there, and this mix might be Ted's mix, and maybe Alfonso did very slight tweaks, but it's pretty much the mix that he got from Ted, I think. And it's just one of these songs that I thought sounded fantastic. Probably because I wasn't at the session, I didn't, see all the false takes and stuff. I just heard the final product, and it blew my mind. I have to say, when I first heard it, it has such a gentle and relaxing sound. I thought it was a perfect song to end disc 1 after some of the raucous and upbeat and up-tempo songs, just to have something very gentle at the end. It's always nice to finish an album with a gentle song, I think. And I hope you enjoy listening to the song, Dafni's version, Bliss's version, and the interview that I did with Bliss. Okay. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. We've come to the end of disc 1, so the next videos will be disc 2. We're over the hump, and I look forward to seeing you all again. Okay, bye.
I heard about her before I actually met her. I started hearing about her, and it might actually have been because Charlie McGovern produced that album of hers. And somewhere along the line, I started seeing her perform, and I really liked that song Dimes.
Everybody does.
Yes, I know. I remember, Laura was always like, would sing it sometimes when we'd be driving to a show or something. Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't remember exactly the first time, but we had so many mutual friends. We probably met at the cinema bar or someplace like that.
Like everybody else.
Yeah. And I always looked forward to seeing the two of you because you were always so friendly and funny. And she was really, really supportive when I started performing again. You may remember, she invited me over and she was showing me some things on guitar and invited me to take part in a songwriter round one night at Tex. I know Jamie. Yeah, I'm a little murky on the details, but I know we did something together.
I know there was one time when you all came around to our apartment and practiced harmonies.
Yes. I think it
I
was
Sarah Stanley, Jamie, and you.
And Shuey, and...
I have a recording of that night, or of the individual songs.
Yeah, I have some of those in my computer, too.
I think,
I can't even remember
let's record them and
what year
share
that
them
was.
so we can remember how the harmonies go, yeah.
I don't remember exactly where. I remember coming to see her play at some little place, like a dessert bistro or something, in Old Pasadena once.
Oh yeah, the Pop Champagne.
That's it, yeah. But it was just part of the music community. We were both swimming in the same pool on different sides, and then we came together and got to be friends, and then you guys started coming to the Christmas parties. And
Of course, highlight of the year. Social event of the calendar, or whatever they say.
Yeah, she was such a good guitar player. And for as petite as she was, she had such a tremendous spirit. And I always admired how she'd be like, I'm going to learn how to play French horn, or I'm going to learn how to box. And then she would just, get the French horn and learn how to do it, or get the pink boxing gloves and learn how to do things. And for the longest time, I didn't realize fully how accomplished she was in terms of her thesis with her, her chemistry studies, and how much she had learned and achieved in that realm as well. I mean, she was just a really genuinely accomplished human being, and for all her talents, I think perhaps her greatest contribution was her kindness and how much she brought people together and supported them.
That's true, yeah. She was someone, if she put her mind to something, she would achieve it.
Yeah, I
It
really
was always her
admired
goal
that.
she always challenged herself to do something.
Yeah.
She was always busy.
And you guys gave the best Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas dinners. I remember being there for a couple of them. It was so much fun to be there.
Oh, yeah, it was always nice to see you come over, yeah.
Hey.
Nothing.
she was so genuine. That was one thing I always appreciated too. And I like that merging of folk and jazz. And she covered that a lot in what she did. And we were both big Billie Holiday fans. So I certainly appreciated that. And yeah, I mean, really, I was so grateful when she invited me over and she was just showing me different things on guitar because I'm a pretty rudimentary guitar player. She was very gracious that way with so many of us. I've heard lots of stories from people about things that she did to help them. And especially on, when we were going through all the songs, choosing songs to do for the tribute at the show at the cinema as well as for the compilation album. I would remember listening to all those songs, particularly on the last album, and was really impressed with how, balanced all of her compositions were and how melodic they were. I mean, they were very inviting to sing. And obviously with Floating, I loved the imagery in it too. And just everything it just seemed like she was getting more and more sophisticated in what she was composing.
Yeah.
And I really would have enjoyed hearing what she would have continued to come up with. And seeing her do more. Because the other thing was, I mean, she was really good at getting up and accompanying other people. Like when the Good Intentions would come to town. I remember seeing her at, in my living room at a cabin concert and at the coffee gallery backstage, and I think maybe at the cinema bar. She not only would sing harmony, but she'd be up there with banjo, I think, and possibly...
She had to learn all the songs at one point.
But she was a solid enough musician that she would accompany other people in their music as well. She was very savvy that way, too. So.
Yeah, she joined the modern skiffle quartet as well.
Yes.
Towards the end, so to play bass on that.
With Janet,
and Ben Vaughan, yeah.
of distant stars wandering, secretly sinking out slowly, disappear into nothing, nothing at all. Floating, floating out to sea.
Because I remember at the show I did Floating and I did Part of Me
Ah, yes.
and was talking to you for the tribute album, but Tony had a special affinity for Part of Me. And
Yeah.
Tony Gilkison.
Tony had played that song at the hospital where Daphne was in the ICU on the day that they pronounced her brain dead. And it was just so emotional that I felt
Absolutely.
he needs to play that one. And I know you wanted to play it. I know you wanted to
really,
maybe accompany Tony, sing with him or something.
His version wouldn't want to touch it.
Yeah.
It's lovely the way it is. Well, like I said, I had been listening to so many of her songs, and I keyed in on that final album especially because there's not a bum one in the bunch.
Yeah, it's a good record.
And when you're going, okay, I want to sing a song, you want to have like a personal connection to a song, and those lyrics were something I could really, get into. And I think for all of us who are also having connections to different songs, because they triggered memories, we were mindful of, the state of things. And with Floating, I was singing along with a lot of them, going, what one would be good to sing? And then there's something about it, I felt at home with it. And somewhere along the line, I got this image in my head of literally like being out in the ocean, floating, and hearing a band jamming on the beach, And so that's where I got the idea that, okay, let's do this and start with ocean sounds and then kind of fade into the players. And God bless them, Ted Russell Camp and Chris Lawrence and Dave Raven. I asked them, could you please do this? And they were all like, absolutely. They wanted to do it for Dafni, and they all really liked the song. And I said, this is what I want to do. I love the version that she and Dan cooked up. What Dan Janisch does on guitar.
Yeah, he plays an amazing solo on that one.
Yeah, it's great. But he already did that.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I really want to do this, but I want to emphasize and elevate this particular spirit. What can we come up with that's a little different from Dan? And so, as you know, Chris and I used to be a couple, but for 13 years, and then we've been best friends ever since 2011 and neighbors until the beginning of this month. And so I've had the opportunity to hear him play guitar much differently than most people have. They're familiar with him playing with Mike Ness or with Sin City All-Stars or any number of country bands. But, I've always heard him noodling on electric guitar and coming up with these really beautiful, instrumentals that are a world apart from what he normally does in a band context. And so we were talking, and I said, I want to do something, and let's do something different from what Dan did. And so he came up with those atmospheric, riffs and lines, and the tone is perfect.
Yeah,
that's what I love about those guys. They're all so creative. Ted is a fountain of creativity and ideas. Anything you work with him on. It's one of the reasons why I love playing with him. and we recorded it at Ted's studio in Highland Park, the Den. And, you know, he had a lot of different ideas. Raven came with his djembe drum, and also just a bag of percussion, you know, toys, I call them. But it was great. He was just like pulling out this and pulling out that, and, you know, trying the triangle. And so everybody was just trying different things. And I remember we were talking at the end of it, we all felt this really electric rush of creativity in the studio that day. It was a powerful spirit, feeling, whatever you want to call it, but it was on, you know, and it's like, let's try this, let's try that. And I remember at one point I looked over, and Ted, who is a monster bass player, he pulls out a piece of paper because he's listening to Raven doing all these things, you know, different, you know, counter rhythms on percussion, pulls out a piece of paper, has it on his lap, and he starts slapping out another rhythm on his lap, you know, sort of in counterpoint to what Raven was doing. And they were all inspiring each other, you know, to try different things. And the song just kept lifting up. And then I got that idea. It's like, why don't I try doing this, you know, vocal kind of staccato thing at the end and take it out? And I was thinking of a breath, you know, and it was all connected around this vision of floating in the ocean and being drawn in by music and musicians on the beach, and the healing power of that. And there's this unmistakable thread of sadness through it, because it's about departure as much as it is about arrival. And, but I think the way she wrote that song, it's so beautiful. You can bring a number of different interpretations to it. I mean, she left us a lot of room. And I think we all felt that spirit from her in the room that day. And, you know, we were blessed. We got to make some beautiful music with her song.
Staring then I'll slowly disappear into nothing at all. Floating out to sea.
I remember her joy. I remember, there are so many things I remember, you know. Like when you ask if I have recollections, I get like a stream of them all at once.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her in the backyard when we had a DDA Chevalier Appreciation Day for him. I think it must have been the hottest day of August. DDA, if you're watching, hello. But who was there? Deb Tala was there, and Dafni, and Vicky Hill, and Kathy, and Anissa, and Peggy, and Alyssa was there, and me, and Asia, and Jeremy, and Chris, and I am forgetting somebody. I'm going to hate myself for that later. But I remember, you know, Daphne just being so full of light. And when I did that birthday show at the cinema bar, there's some great pictures of her and Jean Townsend and Alyssa Archibald. And she could have a very impish sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it would bubble up at the funniest times. I think the thing I remember too is she had such sweetness and such great manners. You know, and when you're at a show, at a club, it gets noisy and it's kind of hard. I personally have a hard time talking over all of that, so it makes it difficult to have a genuine conversation. But the connections with her were always genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And I valued that a lot. You know, and that's, you know, not to say that I don't appreciate, you know, fun social patter or whatever. It certainly has its place. But when you find someone who, like, sees you for who you are, that's gold. You know?
I think you told me in the past that it's not the case, but I thought the end of that song when you were doing the what I consider Laurie Anderson, the little
Yeah, well, that's what I meant.
I thought
like,
that it sounds like "Oh Superman" by Laurie Anderson, and
Oh,
Daphne
wow.
was kind of towards the end of her life. She was listening to Laurie Anderson a lot, and we actually went to the. So you're telling me this is not a Laurie Anderson borrowing a phrase or something from her, but
No,
we went
not
to
at
the
all.
New Art and saw Laurie Anderson's movie she made about Lou Reed, and she was there for Q&A, and so I thought, oh, this is really cool, because we had just gone to see that, probably weeks before Dafni died. We went to see Laurie Anderson, and it's like, oh, that's a little nod to Laurie Anderson. Maybe Bliss knows that Dafni,
No,
because
I
it
remember
sounds like
you
that.
guys talking about going to that, but that wasn't where I was coming from. I was thinking of her breathing.
Yeah.
Literally.
Okay.
Which is
Well,
kind
I made the connection. I think it's cool. Maybe it was
Yeah.
unintentional, but
Well, hey,
it
it's more
sounds
about
like
that
it.
song.
It
It allows you
sounds.
to bring your own associations.
Yeah, that's what every artist wants, right? For the listener to make up their own opinion about the song.